Call to the order. 3.0. Call to Item 4.0, report on action taken in closed session. The fact-finding hearing conducted by the governing board, the board finds that there is cause to expel and approves the expulsion of student case number 242517 for violation of Ed Code sections, excuse me, 48900D, 48900H, 48900M, 48915A2, and 48915B for the spring semester of 2025 and fall semester of 2025. The fact-finding hearing conducted by the governing board, the board finds that there is cause to expel and approve the expulsion of student case number 242518 for violation of Education Code sections 48900C, 48915B1, 48915B2 for the spring semester of 2025 and fall semester. In regards to item 2.3, personnel matters, there's nothing to report. On item 2.4, the board voted 4-0 in unanimous vote, identifying to reject the claim of number 240063. And in regards to item 2.5, nothing to report. 5.0, approval of order of agenda items for this meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
6.0. Now 6.1.
Yes, thank you, President Skemper. It's my pleasure to introduce Catherine Mullins. Catherine is in back there. You want to stand up real quick? Catherine will be serving as the new principal at Sierra View Elementary School. Catherine comes to us with extensive experience as a site administrator with Modesto City Schools, where she served as principal at El Vista School, as well as Franklin Elementary School. She has earned many recognitions, most recently receiving the MCS Hero Award for the second time, I might add. So trustees, I'd like to formally introduce Catherine and welcome her to the OJUSD leadership team. Welcome, Catherine. I don't know if you have any comment or? Sure. Yeah, just really quick, right there is fine. Yeah.
I just want to say thank you very much for that introduction. I'm just very excited to be part of the First Place School District. It's been a long-time goal of mine to be part of this district. I do live in Oakdale. I'm a part of the community, and the success of the community is very important to me. I'm thrilled to be of service of our Sierra View scholars and family members and community.
Thank you. I also have the pleasure of introducing a familiar face. Pleased to introduce Mr. Talmadge Allen as the new principal at Fair Oaks Elementary School. Talmadge needs a little introduction. We know him well. He's loyally and impressively served as vice principal at Oakdale Junior High School, I believe since 2018? 16, okay. So prior to that, Talmadge served as a site administrator with the Escalon School District, including serving as a principal at Val Allen Elementary. So he understands the elementary schools pretty well. He's been actively involved in the community and has definitely earned this opportunity to lead Fair Oaks Elementary. Very excited for Fair Oaks, and Talmadge, congratulations on it.
Looking forward to working at Fair Oaks. I'm excited about the new challenge, but excited to take a great school. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good people, too.
All right, 7.0, organizational reports, there are none, so we'll move to 8.0. Public comments. Public comments will be allowed. The board president will recognize any member of the audience wishing to speak on items not on the agenda, but directly related to school business. The president may allot to those wishing to speak, but no more will be, may allot time to those wishing to speak, but no action will be taken on matters presented. Individual speakers may be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each item. The board may limit the time total for public input on each item to 20 minutes. With board consent, the president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. If appropriate, the president or any member of the board may direct that a matter be referred to the superintendent's office for placement on a future agenda. Debbie, do you have any public comments?
We do not.
All right. Then let's jump to 9.0. The consent calendar. 9.1, removal of a consent calendar. Information concerning consent items has been forwarded to each board member prior to the meeting for study. Unless some board member or members of the audience has a question about a particular item, ask that it be withdrawn from the consent list. The items will be approved at one time by the Board of Trustees. The action taken in approving consent items is set forth in the explanation of the individual items. So as 9.2, adoption of the consent calendar. Can I get or does anybody have anything they wish to remove?
No.
Anybody in the crowd? All right, then can I get a motion?
I'll motion to accept the consent calendar.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? There we go. All right. 11. Reports. 11.1. Report on district local indicators. One of many.
On that note, I will say that I am here on behalf of Dr. Lee.
I'm taking a look at all of our business board policies. Most of them are extremely outdated, so I'm just bringing you this first batch. One of them is the transfer of funds, which is our AR regulation 3110. It's just brief changes, and they are outlined on those differences between our current regulation as well as the CSBA recommended regulation. Every year I ask the board to approve a resolution to transfer funds, so it's kind of perfect timing that this is coming to today. I ask that the board take a look at this revision and let me know if they have any recommendations for it to come back in August for approval.
Questions, discussion? 11.4, first reading of the BPAR 3100. Please.
Yes. I'm recommending changes to our board policy 3100 and our administrative regulation 3100. The current board policy still references revenue limit, which we know has not been in place since 2013, so it is overdue for us to update our policy on our budget and our administrative regulation. All the changes have been noted in here, and if you have any recommendations, please let me know. I did not change our board's reserve requirement of that 5%, so that is still in here, and it has been and will be maintained. Other than that, if you have any recommendations or changes, otherwise I'll come back to the board in August for approval.
Any questions? All right. We'll move on to 4.0 action items.
So, tonight I bring to the board, looking for approval for what is called the Reading Difficulties Risk Screener, which is a new requirement for districts. Senate Bill 114, signed in 2023, mandated that a reading difficulties risk screener be administered to all kindergarten, first, and second grade students annually. So a group of teachers and staff reviewed all screener options and decided on the program called Multitudes. As it is research-based, it's easy to administer, is given on linked devices one-to-one with easily understandable and immediately generated reports for each student, and it gives ideas to teachers for immediate intervention. So tonight I'll have a brief presentation that I'll be presenting on behalf of my colleague. Before you is the timeline for the identification of the risk screener. So you can see that the process did begin back in spring of 2023, and we are today presenting as an option for the district to approve, or for the board to approve. More about the RDRS requirements. So all K-2 students must be screened in reading every year. The screener will identify students who might benefit from early intervention. Students who need early intervention might also need further evaluation. And number 4, which is one point that absolutely needs to be emphasized, is the screener is not a diagnostic. It doesn't tell why the student may be struggling, but with what reading skills they are struggling with and how teachers and families can help. So that is a point that absolutely needs to be stressed, that it is not a diagnostic. The assessment Multitudes is neuroscience-based. It translates the latest findings into useful tools for educators. It is designed for multilingual learners. It is fair and accurate measurement to support equitable reading outcomes for all students. It is culturally affirming and embraces the many variations in dialect, culture, and region that enrich our state. And additionally, there's no cost for California public schools. Every student can expect the best in early literacy screening for reading challenges. In Multitudes, as was mentioned, it is a one-to-one administration for students in K-2. It'll take approximately 10 minutes to administer the test, and it is given every year, once a year, and can screen anywhere on 2 linked devices. With Multitudes, once students are screened, stress is the fact that there is flexibility with the implementation of the diagnostic. At this point, it is expected that all K-2 teachers will be trained in the screener in the fall of 2025. In September 2025, if needed, other staff may be trained to give the test. Second graders will be tested in October, first graders in January, and kindergartners in February. Pushing the test out to that time of the year will ensure that students have enough exposure in the classroom and be prepared to take this test. Again, there is flexibility in the timeline. This is the first year of administration, and there will be a lot of evaluation and reflection throughout the year to determine if this in fact is the best timeline moving forward. In terms of next step for families, there is going to be an FAQ page on the website in early July of 2025 to inform parents of this new screener. There will be demo videos of screening on the website as well by mid-July, and an informational newsletter from the district after school starts will be provided to all families. All families, in addition, will be notified prior to the screener being administered to ensure that they know that the test will be given to their student, and parents, like any other assessment, will be given the opportunity to opt their child out of the screener if they feel it's not something that would be their child to participate. So with that, it is recommended that the OJUSD Board of Trustees with the adoption of the multitude reading screener for use of kindergarten, first and second grades.
Wendy, were you on the committee? Okay. Thank you. Congratulations on that. Great. I have a question about who's going to be, I know when I spoke with Gillian, we talked about the impact on classroom teachers' time, and that was not really a viable thing for us to do. Has that changed?
Actually, right now, the request is from the teachers for them to administer this. So the feedback that she's received is that
When and how?
teachers might interest.
If you're talking 10 minutes per, it's a pull back thing?
Probably.
Right.
I'm not going to.
Get the kids organized and here they come.
But I
Okay.
am aware that teachers have expressed interest in giving the test in order to understand what the test is looking for, or what students are being tested on, and so that they can prepare students as well.
And that was kind of a universal, because that's not what I heard, but I also obviously do not have the same pipeline to information that you guys do, so I totally understand that.
And I'm more removed from it, so I would direct that question to Gillian for more specifics.
Okay. Okay, that'd be great. I understand that some teachers would want to do it. I also understand some teachers would not, just because it's a big time commitment. So I'm just, yeah, I know we have to do it. I appreciate the fact that the committee got together and figured out the best one for us, so.
And if you notice as well, one thing that she noted on her timeline is that other staff are being considered. So there is that opportunity for additional training of other staff. That could potentially be our learning lab staff that could be administering that assessment. So
And the
that's an
training
option.
for the K-2 staff is after-school training, or is it a pre-school starting training?
I don't know.
Okay, sorry. All right, I won't bug you anymore, Armita.
Terry, I don't know.
You know I'm lying.
Those are really good questions, though, so.
No other questions?
I do have one quick one. If somebody chooses to opt out, do the teachers just sort of observe to hope that child is reading at their level? And that just seems so crazy to me that somebody would not want to know, but I guess it happens, but.
Yeah,
So
the
they
teacher
just
would
sort
do
of-
what the teacher does right now without the screener. You would use your
Okay,
best
yeah, just
judgment to
kinda-
provide the intervention and support that the student could need, yeah, without having any official, for lack of a better term, data.
Do we need to take a motion on that? Yep. Can I get a motion?
I move that we approve the adoption of the multitudes reading screener for use with K-1 to grade students as presented.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Let's move to 12.2. So second reading approval, BP 6163.4, student use of technology.
So I bring before you, Board Policy 6163.4. for second reading, and this is for student use of technology. Board Policy 6163, use of technology, has not been updated in OJUSD's board policy since August of 2010. In that time, the use of technology has expanded in both scope and form, and a new policy is needed to address these changes. Dr. Wegner brought forward the policy last month for revision, for presentation and review. Noted in your copy of the board policy, all the text that is in pink is the text that was added based on your input. So she did ask me to highlight that for you, and you all have a copy of that. It is recommended that the OJUSD Board of Trustees review this revision to Board Policy 6163.4, student use of technology as presented, and consider this revision for adoption.
Any questions?
I appreciate the local standards being put in there.
Yeah.
Can you tell her thank you?
All right, no other questions? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
12.3, adoption of the LCAP. Alita.
Last month, Dr. Wegner brought forward the LCAP, gave a presentation, not brought forward, but gave a presentation on the district's LCAP for the 25-26 school year. This evening, I come before the district, before the board to request approval of the 25-26 LCAP. A lot of papers here. For the OJUSD. I just get to seek approval. She got the presentation. Yeah, this one's easy.
Yep. So can I get a motion on that?
I move that we adopt the 2025 local calendar.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. All those in favor? All right, 12.5, adoption of the 2025-2026 budget. Alita, thank you.
Be able to share with you our 2026 annual budget. We'll be covering just briefly our comparative analysis to other districts. We'll talk briefly about the governor's May revise, overview of our general fund, multi-year projection, and then what occurs next. The page listed here have more details in the adopted budget book that is posted on the district's website, as well as has been handed out to each of you tonight. So go ahead. We have a number of unified school districts within a 50-mile radius of us. We know that we have a very low unduplicated count. And of course, that translates to our low LCFF funding. We are one of the third lowest in this 50-mile radius of our total funding. If we take the amount that, say, Waterford Unified and multiply that by our 23-24 attendance, that would have equaled $21 million more a year for our students to serve them. Unfortunately, we do not receive that kind of money to serve our students, so we do with what we can for all of our students. And that means putting the money where it needs to be, and that's in our direct instruction. So the majority of our funds go as it should be. Outside of Turlock, which every year we're right below them, we are higher than all 50-mile radius from us in how we are spending our funds, which is, of course, for our students. So overall, state economy is showing some mixed signals. Yeah, the state does have a structural deficit that they're having to address. And some of those ways of addressing it is sort of underestimating Prop 98, as well as offering a deferred, our revenue being deferred in June of 26 to July of 26. That is 1 month of revenue that we will not be receiving if the state does defer it. So we're making sure that cash is important. One of the things that the state had done is that a couple of years ago, the governor said, we're gonna implement a rainy day reserve for a Prop 98. And when we have that rainy day reserve, right, the local school districts don't need a reserve or as need as much of a reserve because we'll keep it for you. They're up to 8.1%. In 1 year, they wiped it out, okay? They're put a little bit back here and there as they get some ability to put some money in, but that reserve was cleaned out pretty quickly. And they clean it out quickly by spending one-time reserve on ongoing costs. As we know, you cannot do that and you should not do that. So that is our state for you.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Correct. But for us, we are receiving 80.8 million, or estimated to receive in 25-26, and almost 90% of our revenue comes from the state of California. That's why we watch what the state is doing, and we monitor the state's budget projections and things like that, because so much of our money is coming directly from the state. So I don't care as much what's going on at the federal level, because I'm only receiving 3% in our general fund of federal revenue. And then estimating our COLA being 2.3, not estimating, it is next year, 2.3 on our LCFF. We are continuously to decline by about 1% every year, so we're using our 3-year average ADA, and we do not include any one-time funds in this budget so that we can take a look at really where we are at on an ongoing basis. In our expenditures, 82.8 million, that includes step and column for all employees. And the first time since 2011, I think, we see a decrease in CalPERS rate, which is pretty amazing. And we're even seeing, even if it is a slight decrease, but at least it's some movement on our CalPERS. Our property and liability has increased and will continue to increase, and we talked about that when we talked about the fires in Southern California. Property insurance went up. That equates to all of us having to pay more, including schools, and of course, not including any one-time funds in our expenditures.
Sandra,
Yes.
can you mention a little bit about what we need to prepare for in regards to liability insurance?
Are you talking about AB 218?
That along with, you know, again,
Other?
them lowering the threshold of what the federal, the Supreme Court's recent decision about lowering the threshold of damages for special education and all that. Just brace us a little bit, that our insurance rates may be going up dramatically.
Our insurance rate already this year went up 30% from prior year. And the majority of that's due to AB 218, and I'd recommend taking a look at that if you haven't seen it in the papers. A majority of that's coming out of the Southern California school districts settling on claims against their districts. But that does impact us because we are part of some of those same funds, and then also preparing us for any potential of those. So just on our liability has gone up, our property insurance has gone up, and now we're hearing more of what Mr. Mendonca was talking about, and the changes at the federal level will also impact us, and he can speak much more on the special ed side. And I'm not as versed on special education.
Just there's opportunity for more lawsuits and litigations against the district because of the interpretations and the recent court rulings. So we just need to prepare ourselves for some more increased liability premium costs.
We are part of a JPA, and they do the best they can to manage it, but we do have an excess layer that we have to pay, and that's coming out of a market. And whatever the market's driving of those rates is what we are able to but, you know, I mean, they're preparing, we're all preparing because we are in a very high-risk area, being in schools and things like that.
So it's not due to our findings
No.
of court cases that ruled against us, but cases that have settled out of court with other school districts
Will impact our
impact.
rates.
That's right. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and that's the same with all the other liability.
Unfortunately.
And that means less money that we can serve our current students with. And that's what's so unfortunate about all of this, is that it's taking away money from being able to do the direct instruction of our students. because now we're paying lawyers, or we're paying for those settlements, and we're paying our insurance companies, and as we know, that's not where the money should be going. But we have to have it. So we're still putting 64% in our 25-26 budget to our direct instruction of our students. And if we include our instructional supports, which includes our principals and our office staff and our pupil services, and that's our transportation department, that includes our psychology and counseling services, those three categories are almost 85% are direct supports to our students. So that's where the money is going, and that's where it should be going, is in those direct supports. It shouldn't be going to our general administration. We kind of have to put it into maintenance and operations of our facilities, but the majority of our funds are going to direct supports for our student position. Overall, in our unrestricted, we're expecting a deficit of $1.4 million. This is a known deficit because of our declining enrollment, because of our costs going up, because of our property and liability costs. But we still have a healthy reserve. And our unassigned reserve, that's not including that committed amount, is at 7.61%. So let's move on to our multi-year and what this looks like. A multi-year is just a calculation. It's a calculation of the facts that we know of at the time that I do that calculation. Those factors, like the state economy, will change. And as those change, of course, our multi-year will change. So right now, we are using the assumptions that our Department of Finance COLA projections of 3.02 for 26-27 and to 3.42 for 27-28. Still expecting a 1% decline in ADA over the next 3 years of our multi-year, but are still funded on that 3-year average. Of course, step and column that we have to pay for all of our employees. We have our CalPERS pension that's going up a little bit over the next few years, and then of course our property and liability insurance increases that are being factored into our multi-year. With that being said, our unrestricted deficit is going down over those next 3 years. So we do still have a deficit, but it is a controlled deficit is what I'd like to say. We know it's there, we're monitoring the situation, but we have a reserve and we're not prepared to make any additional cuts. We don't need to make any additional cuts at this time to be able to address that deficit. That's why we have that reserve. It's to help us in these times when we need them so that we don't have to devastate any programs to our kids at this time. So we're keeping things sort of status quo over the next few years, and that's what I'm expecting in our multi-year, knowing we have a deficit, but knowing we also sort of have that reserve to kind of prepare us for these next few years should we continue to need it. Things are going to change. With almost 90% of our budget coming from the state of California, we're keeping an eye on the state economy. If we can bring back students or we can have our increase in our ADA, that'll definitely help or hinder our multi-year. Minimum wage is something that we are continuously having to address because it's going up without stopping. And then, of course, we need to make sure that we keep in mind our contract negotiations with our bargaining units and everything like that, because that is not factored into our multi-year. So it is. So what's coming next? If the state enacted budget is significantly different than the May revised, I'll be coming back to you in August. However, I do not anticipate that to be the case. Could happen if something drastic happens between the next, couple days, but likely it's not going to. So I don't expect that we'll need to come back in and make any changes to this plan for next year. But it will be back in September to share with you our unaudited actuals from 24-25, and then again for first interim in December. Thank you for having me today.
Questions? Of the money that we have in the accounts, how do we store that? Is that stored, is there any way we can store that like a high interest yielding accounts? Or is it just sitting there and kind of done? Are my soldiers getting work for me? I'm trying to figure out, like if we're continuing to go into deficits, that's a scary situation.
Correct. But what
I get that we have the 5%, but at some point you steal away from that.
Was mixing up, I think, a couple of things. So our county treasury does our investing for us. So all of OJUSD's money is handled, cash, not money, cash is managed by the county treasury. And that is managed for the county treasury for all school districts, and they get a pretty good return, and they invest in the stock market and bonds and high yields and blah, blah, blah. So they do the investment for our school district. We get interest off those funds, and that interest is factored into our budgets every year. So we do get interest, and that is factored into there in each of our different funds. So, and now we have more than 5% in our unassigned reserve, but we still have a committed fund balance that the board had approved in 2021 for just these kinds of reasons. That committed fund balance carries that additional 5% that the board has asked that it be reserved for these situations, and as well we have it for when we do a textbook adoption and for other situations that could occur in the future. And that's over 10% in that committed fund balance. So we still have a good, healthy reserve.
Prudent planning.
All right, so no other questions? That was 12.5, so we'll go to 12.6.
Can I ask the board to approve our 25-26 annual budget, please?
Yes. Can I get a motion?
I move we approve the 25-26 annual budget.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Board passes unanimously. 12.6, adoption of resolution 242517, the interfund transfers.
Every year, I ask the board to approve this resolution. This resolution allows us to transfer funds between our various accounts. In particular, we transfer between our charter school and our general fund for services that our general fund provides to our charter school. We also transfer funds between our deferred maintenance account and our general fund, as well as other various funds that we have. So I'm asking the board to approve the resolution tonight to authorize us to transfer funds as needed between our various accounts.
Any questions? This will be a roll call vote, so Terry Taylor,
Aye.
Tina Shaswell.
You need a motion.
Oh, I need a
I
motion.
make a motion to adopt resolution 242517.
I'll second.
All right. Terry Taylor,
Aye.
Tina Shaswell,
Aye.
Bill Duval,
Aye.
and myself, aye. Resolution passes. 12.7, adoption of resolution 242518, the education protection account of 2025 and 2026.
Every year, we must adopt a resolution certifying that we will not spend education protection dollars on anything other than instruction of our students. So this resolution is certifying that based off of the dollar amounts we're getting from those additional taxes we have been paying since the Great Recession. So I ask that the board approve the resolution for the education protection account.
So
Question?
we can't use it for anything, but the state can do what they want with the money, right? Basically,
The state's
I know it's two different things, but
when
just like Larry said,
when we all voted back during the Great Recession, when we all voted to increase our taxes to help schools, that's still what these are. And we've certified that we're going to continue to pay those additional taxes. So those funds technically can only go to us, and we can only spend them on instruction.
So yes.
yeah. Thank you, Larry. That was really nicely worded, Sandra.
So if there's no other questions, can I get a motion?
I make a motion to approve resolution 242518.
Second,
I'll second.
and roll call vote. Terry Taylor,
Aye.
Tina Shaswell,
Aye.
Bill Duval,
Aye.
myself, aye. All right. Thank you, Sandra. 12.8, approval to enter into agreements with select architectural and engineering firms for farm projects. Mr. Mendonça.
So glad I could give our meeting and Cassandra a break today. The district issued a request for qualifications, an RFQ, to establish a capable, qualified pool of architects for our Measure G bond program. We got 9 responses that were received by the deadline of May 27th. A selection committee was formed and rated firms on a scoring sheet based on the criteria noticed that was actually noted in the RFQ per the requirements or per the resolution of our bond. Tally sheet Measure G bond projects. These firms selected include Pratt Architecture, Finney Architects, Architecnica, and Teeter Architecture. Given the scope and the nature of the various construction projects, the district will need to negotiate the constructional terms and conditions with each firm based upon our needs and the needs and specialization. Each agreement will be subsequently ratified by the board. Therefore, it's recommended the Board of Trustees authorize the superintendent to enter into agreements with the selected firm.
A motion to approve to enter into agreements with selected architectural and engineering firms for bond projects. Aye.
That time of year, given the extensive responsibilities of our district administrative team, superintendent wishes to continue to offer two-year contracts to the assistant superintendents and the chief business officer for the term of July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2027. All personnel action recommended by the superintendent does require board approval. Compensation is already set by the appropriate placement on the management salary schedule. Therefore, with the highly accountable duties and the exceptional service provided, it is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the contracts of the assistant superintendents and chief business officer through June 30th, 2027 as presented. July 4th holiday. And then 1327, we will be conducting a special board meeting, a board study session on Tuesday, July 8th, starting at